government's boosting the minimum wage again, they announced. Would National do that?
Well, we've been very supportive of increases in minimum wage. If you think about what we did in government, and if you think about the research around the world, and I've said this before, is it's really about the right time and the right place. Fundamentally, you've got to look at it and say, the research would say if the economy is growing around 3 to 4% and it's broad based and it's healthy, that's a good time for you to take minimum wage increases. That's the global research the last 40 or 50 years around the world. So we are supportive of minimum wages, but what this is a massive admission. The government has not managed inflation well at all. It's got a major cost of living crisis, and as a result, this is a function, we acknowledge that this is what they're proposing around minimum wage. What I would say to you is the government doesn't pay it. It's paid for by small businesses. And they've been stuck with minimum wage increases, an extra matariki public holiday, 5 days sick leave, now national insurance schemes coming at them in terms of another 3% tax. They've got potentially awards coming at them, the sectoral awards as well. So the question you've got to say is you've got to be able to build pro-business productivity and growth kind of policies, and that's the ultimate way in which you'll be able to can afford higher wages and incomes. So from our point of view, it's an acknowledgement. Yes, it's tough if you're a low-income earner, but gee, it's really tough if you're not, if you're one of the 90% of people who aren't getting a minimum wage increase either, because this government has mismanaged and let inflation get away from it, and we've now got a cost of living crisis.
So you're saying essentially it does need to happen because of the inflation, or would you not do it?
It's a really tough one because essentially the people who pay for it are businesses, and they're hurting, and they're dealing with COVID going up and down over the last few years. They've burnt through all their cash. I was talking to a small business in Blenheim the other day, visited with them, husband and wife team in a cafe. They've had $27,000 worth of cost added to their business. They're the people that are paying for this minimum wage increase. So yes, there's an acknowledgement. Yes, it's tough for low-income earners, but there has to be an acknowledgement the people that are paying for it have also been doing it brutally tough.
But yes or no, does National support them?
We support whether we would support a consistent increase in minimum wage. That's what we did in government, and we would continue to do so here. But we would actually be focused on what are we doing to make sure that we can drive a more productive economy that ultimately creates those higher wages and salaries. And the government has only got two things going for it. It spends 68% increase in government spending, and it's relied on low interest rates. And as a result, it's now driving inflation with its spending, and that means interest rates are going up.
Would it be, if you don't do this, take the politics out of it?
There's a whole bunch of things you could do, but the bottom line I'm trying to say to you is you have to take a minimum wage increase when the economy is in good shape. Otherwise, that's what the research will say. I can tell you there are a lot of businesses that are going to take have to now...
Growth's pretty good.
No, that's not broad-based. You're looking at a macroeconomic sense of, and the Prime Minister will like to say there's 3% unemployment. Yes, but there's another 90,000 people on a main benefit here in New Zealand at the moment as well. So you've got to look at the macro is quite different from what's happening in the micro. There has been nothing to help small businesses, which are the lifeblood of New Zealand, that actually employ the people, that actually have to pay these costs to support them.
Sorry, I'm still kind of not clear. You support minimum wage hikes in general. When is the right time? Is it the right time now? Yes or no?
As an acknowledgement that it's really tough for low-income earners.
But yes or no?
And it's also really tough for small businesses. That's the reality of it.
So it sounds like you don't really have a position, yes or no?
No, support minimum wage increases. I don't think the quantum, there's a question about what the quantum is, but I also support the fact that there needs to be much better effort than going into small businesses, because the government doesn't care about business people, and it is the business people that are paying for it. They're the ones that have gone through the ups and downs of COVID, trying to worry about whether they can make payroll. They're the ones that have burned through all their savings. 30% of the mortgages in this country are actually small business people mortgaging their homes for their businesses.
You're talking about how government's increased the spending a lot and that's driving inflation. Much of that spending has gone to these businesses, hasn't it?
Some of it has. Half the COVID fund's gone into COVID activity, and that's perfectly reasonable. But a lot of it's wasteful spending. Why are we spending $500 million on a healthcare restructure with management consultants this year when we can't get rapid antigen tests and we can't do the basics of getting a good, clear, coherent COVID plan in place?
Just before you finish,
why are we spending $15 to $24 billion on a light rail project at the moment?
Is that the big example of wasteful spending you had? Because we talked about wasteful spending quite a bit in the last couple of weeks with inflation. You pointed to 3 examples: cameras on boats, consultants for free waters. They added up to about 0.1%.
Yeah, I get.
So you get, a lot of the spending you guys agree with. Wage subsidy, $14 billion, you guys agree with it. Superannuation, $14 billion, you agree with it. Most of the really big ticket items, National agree with, don't they? Is light rail the thing you don't?
What we don't agree with is adding 10,000 bureaucrats here into Wellington and getting poorer outcomes, and no one holding them to account for measures or targets. What we don't agree with is a hospital system that actually says what's happening with your elective surgeries, what's happening with your cancer, what's happening with your pharma. We've had no improvement on any of that stuff. We've put a lot of money in. Think about education. A lot of money's gone into education, very poor results and outcomes. 60% of our kids go to school regularly.
So
we're in the bottom of maths, reading and science. You have to drive the bureaucracy much harder than what's happening here at the moment. How does 10,000 extra bureaucrats show up in Wellington at an extra cost of $1.3 billion and we don't get better outcomes? So what we're saying is there is a real opportunity to go through the spending line by line, saying, is that a good program? Is it actually working? Is it effective? Or is that actually a bad program? Be clear about what's working well. Make sure you stay invested in that for all means. But actually, the bottom line is there is also wasteful spending going on. Rein it in now so you don't have to make tougher decisions later.
Is there anything worth more than $1 billion that you actually want to cut?
I'd say to you right now, light rail. Don't do light rail. Pull the money. We're going to spend millions of dollars on business cases, consultants, a whole bunch of malarkey, as we saw with a walking and cycling bridge, as we've seen with a bunch of activity. That just speaks to a mindset of, I'll just keep spending. Ultimately, how does that get manifest itself in higher levels of debt? There's a whole bunch of things that it results in, and it leads to higher inflation, and it's driving the cost of living.